My name is Beau Jones. I'm from Bottle.It TV, Bottle.It Podcast, and anything else I can get Bottle.It. To my right, above me, below me, however you're watching this video, I have Clint Rowlings from RPG Coaching. Bottle.It is
Bonjour.
Bottle.It is a huge fan of RPG coaching. Bottle.It are a huge fan of positive mental health, and one of the elements that we used to compare mental health was our Ironman training last year. And that's rolled on to a few successful Ironman campaigns. It's where I met Clint, and this year we've explored coaching. Last year we went up to Port Macquarie without coaches, and we thought we had a pretty good grasp on what was required for an Ironman and how you could take all of the YouTube clips you could watch and internet advice and a few stories from a few mates and piece together the perfect race. We got it right for what we knew, and everything we knew, we kind of worked within that parameters. And then this year, knowing Clint and knowing the work he's done with a few of our athletes and a few of his own athletes, we thought we'd take the opportunity to go to Port Macquarie, get Clint front row, and basically I shadowed Clint with a camera, with a mic, and just picked his brain as we drove around in the car. And I was blown away with the difference that an insight that an athlete himself and a coach can provide to athletes. And one of the best things was not so much Clint's knowledge, was the passion he has in sharing it with other people. We know that Ironman has a huge audience. We know this, hopefully this YouTube clip and this podcast gets a huge audience of people wanting to better themselves. Clint's words, not mine. I really want people to have the best race day experience they can. And if by sharing some of my information with them helps that, that makes me feel immensely better, and away we go from there. So with no further ado, Clint Rowlings, how are you, mate?
Very well, mate. Thanks for that introduction. Yeah, that's right. It's like what I said is correct, and it stands true that like when you go to those, like the weekend we had, or just you talk to people post race, sometimes you just think, oh, I wish I could have just given them that little bit of advice to make their day a lot better. And it can be so simple. Like it can be the most little thing that they don't think about that can completely derail an Ironman. So yeah, it was good to get to Port. Good to meet the guys who are going to be representing the Floral. We'd been down there a couple of weeks earlier, so it was kind of good to spend some more time on the course. And yeah, I mean, more time there's more information to be able to give to people, right?
It was one of the best weekends that I've never been involved in a training camp coming from a rugby background. I didn't know how it was going to look. And the big difference when a rugby boys weekend away and a triathlon boys weekend away was that if you walked past our table at the pub on Saturday night, I think you would have been really disappointed with the conversation we were having compared to a rugby trip. So it was, you live and you learn. You live and you learn.
Very fair.
I've never known a bunch of rugby boys to be talking about aero positions over a schnitzel. It was weird.
Oh, mate. It was, yeah, the level of tri-froth was 11 out of 10, but that's okay. That's what those weekends are for. So then you can go home and be a normal human, and your wife doesn't have to, you know, listen to you talk about you different. Yeah, and all your lycra. The lycra chat wears thin.
The reason why we toyed around with the idea of this podcast many weeks ago, and you shut me down from calling it the thick and the thin of it. We're going to walk right into here, into our backgrounds, into the sport, and why we're probably underqualified to have this conversation into a professional recording setup. I wanted to be the thick and the thin of it because everything that I watched prior to, and everything that I was reading prior to Ironman Australia was presented by a sub 9 hour, sub 10 hour athlete. It was like carbon shoes and fast bikes. And as someone who's a well north of 12-hour athlete, I was alienated from it. So I wanted to put on the table some perspective from somebody who's, below average age group. Your average age group are someone who's fit, but that's not their life. It's not what they're doing. They just want to get the finishing medal and give a bit of a counterbalance to the advice that you might be offering, or answer some of the questions from a bigger athlete's point of view. So last year I raced, I got 13 hours 47 of little to no run prep. I had the Instagram reels that made it look like I was training a lot. I was telling my wife I was training a lot, but I got a lot of my prep. Not wrong, but I did what I could do to get the finishing medal, and I'm so proud of my time, and no excuses. I raced my best race with what I knew, and had a great day out, met a lot of great people. You're the other end. You're the thin of it, mate. You've got some credentials up at the Port Macquarie Ironman course. You come away with a bit of a shinier medal than I did.
Yeah, I've done that one a few times anyway, and yeah, I've kind of put a lot of effort into that race and love it. It's the best course, best atmosphere, best just the week, like the setup of the town, everything about it's so good. But yeah, I've done it a few times, gone kind of okay there, and been involved with a lot of people who have done really well there. Just to what you said about, the thick and the thin, like I'm always amazed by the people who do relatively well when you actually see the training they do. Like some people, they'll come to you after a race and they'll be like, oh, I want to do better. I went 11 hours or whatever it is. And then you look through their training, like, you went 11 hours on doing that much training? Like, that's a great effort. So, like, don't sell yourself short, Bojo. Like, it's finishing one's cool. So, like, and it's a good effort. And it's a huge thing. So, yeah, don't sell yourself short.
I love that you said finishing it. I'm going to jump in there quickly. For anyone who's listening to this that hasn't done an Ironman, they're sitting on the fence. They've done a couple of 70.3s. One of the greatest things I've ever done in my life, and I wouldn't go as far to say as having a child, but it was doing an Ironman. I've been humbled a few times since finishing and wanting to have a pity party, and I've had a few people in my circle say, yeah, mate, but you're an Ironman. It's something that once you do it, it stays with you forever. It's very well respected in the corporate world, in the social world, that when you say the distances that you've done, it does carry a lot of weight. So by all means, don't be deterred by this video, or don't be put off. We are pro Ironman. Like you got two frothers here that I can't think of anything greater to do with your time. If you've got the time that you want to train, Ironman is the sport for you. Now let's rip in. Let's stop. Me and you could talk. I've limited this Zoom call to an hour and a half, so we're going to keep it in a bite size so people can consume it without hopefully falling asleep. Race weekend, there's nothing we can do right now, is there, that's going to change our fitness or what we're going to provide on race day to a degree. So we're just going to walk straight, not even talk about training. We're just going to talk about our weekend in Port Macquarie, mate. Arriving, what are you looking for?
Mate, it's a course that after spending a fair bit of time there, like being familiar with the area and being familiar with the course now, it is worthwhile getting out and just checking parts of the course on the bike, especially. I mean, the run's relatively flat. Swim, you get more. Well, we'll get to that. Like temperatures and riding, I'd probably get out there early. Traffic around town's a bit can be a bit solid. So if you can get out there early and get through the hills and have a look around out towards the lighthouse and then out to Matthew Flinders, that's worth looking at if you haven't raced there before. And then obviously if you haven't seen the new part of the course out west, probably like the best option would probably be to just put your bike in the car and drive out to like Telegraph Point Servo, and where we parked, and you just kind of out at the service station there, ride a loop, wrap your head around it. It's not as bad as some have said, especially as a lot of the guys realised when we were there that when you ride it at a decent effort, it's a pretty good course. So yeah, I guess when you get to town, familiarise yourself with the course, and just get comfortable. Hey.
Yeah, soak it in. I love the course, how it overlaps in a few spots. Like on the run leg, so if you go and do the bit of a recce on the run, you'll run over the bridge, you swim under. You can see the weir, and it kind of all intertwines. And the ride course now does the same with going out of town and back into town. So there's a really cool chance where you'll be like, your head will be on a swivel because you're like, oh, that's where I go, or that's what I do. So on the drive in, make the most of it. And like Clint said, you don't have to ride the whole course. You can drive out and just do those chunks. Definitely on your arrival, echoing what Clint said, go out to Telegraph Point, look at that new loop, check out the lighthouse. It's quite technical. The out hairpin back into a left, right, left down Flinders. So we'll get to that on the ride course. You've checked in, you soak it all in. You meet someone like Clint as you walk around eating a foot-long Subway, and you're like, maybe I should have skipped the bacon on this because you're judging me for what I'm eating. But you meet some people. Everyone's got the armbands on.
Nothing new race week, mate.
Nothing new. Nothing. It was tried and tested after 36 years.
Kind of what you said just before rings true a bit. Like even from now, like nothing changing what you're doing is not going to drastically improve your day. It's just about getting from now to race day healthy, fit, uninjured. And then when you get to town, it's a bit the same, like freshen up. Fresh is fast, Beau. So like make sure you're not you're not getting to town and you're not like, oh, look at all these fit people. I might just run a bit harder here, or go and ride another hour or whatever. Just stick to your plan. If you've got a coach, obviously that's what they're there for, to help you come up with the right plan to get you to race day as well prepared as possible.
I like that. I like that a lot. Don't do anything new. You're not going to get any fitter the weekend before your race. We're checked in. You've racked your bike. There's about 1,000 checklists. Double check everything. Double check your bike. Go for a ride. Make sure everything works. You checked in. The Ironman Australia team do a great job in doing transition tours. Me and Clint aren't going to do much of that today. It's not our job. We're going to talk through the 3 legs. So you wake up race day. You throw your weddy on. You've had your nutrition. Nothing new. You're on the boat ramp, mate. You're on the boat ramp. You're looking out. What are you looking for? What should you be feeling? Are there any? What are the coaches' tips before we start the swim?
That swim specifically is a bit. If you swim it in the days before, or like if you went there and swim it now, there's boats everywhere. It's a bit of a maze to get through the boats. You don't really know where you're going. And in the days prior to the race, they'll clear the boats out and they'll put the buoys out. So it's very much so like the days before when they do that, you should get in the water and have a look at the course, because you're in a river and there's a lot going on further up the river or down the river when you're swimming. You can actually pick pretty good landmarks in the water. You can come around a turning buoy and just sight ahead and go, all right, there's that. I think there's actually a tower up on top of town in there that you can see straight away when you go around the first buoy. And so it's like, if you can get those little mental notes in your head as like, I know when I go around the first buoy, I'll sight the tower and I know I'm on the right path. Getting comfortable, like confident with where the swim goes, is worthwhile in Port Macquarie specifically, because it is one of those swims where sometimes you don't feel like you'll be swimming along and you'll be like, am I on the right path here? But if you've checked it out in the days before, you can be confident in knowing that, yeah, I've got to aim for that bridge, or I've got to aim for the tower on top of the building there, or whatever that may be. That would be the major thing in the days before, knowing the swim course pretty well. And then obviously race morning, having those mental cues in your head to know where you're going. What I would say is you don't get in the water before that race there. So it's like either a dry land warm up with some swim bands. It's normally pretty cold. So like having your friends, family, whoever there with a jumper, with shoes, because the ground's always freezing. You don't want to get in with really cold body. So have your jumper on, have a beanie on, whatever you need. Do a dry land warm up with some swim bands or whatever you need to. And if you get in the water and you haven't warmed up, don't take off like a madman. Just spend the first couple of minutes chilling out, getting warm, getting your breathing pattern happening, and then settle in. And after a couple of minutes, it'll be that stage of like, shit, it's finally happening. Like this, what I've been devoted to for the last however months, it's fucking. And that's when normally, people will get, the nerves will go, and it's like, all right, let's just execute.
For followers of Bottle.It, I was fortunate enough to have the documentary team follow me around, and that realization that especially last year after COVID, that I was doing it, really does hit when you hit that weir and you stand up and you're like, you've read about the weir, you've watched videos, it's the only course in the world that has a weir that you go out and over. And I was actually a bit nervous that at one stage I was going to fill my goggles with tears. I was so proud to be doing an Ironman, regardless of that. I still had 2K of a swim and everything else. The swim is one of those things that it's not as crowded as definitely not as crowded as I expected. The wave starts are really well policed, and yeah, it was a cruisier swim than I've ever. I think when everyone realizes there's 4Ks to go, they're not as much of the hero. But yeah, the swim is one of those cool things. I enjoy. I say this, and I'd say there are people who agree with me or don't. The water changed. I don't know if the race we did, it goes from salt to fresh. Like you can feel the difference on either side of the weir, which was another novelty that helped break it up.
And that's certainly something that people need to be aware of. Hey, that like you if you're trying to race it and it is cold, like it can be pretty cool. If you're trying to swim pretty hard and you come out of the riverside and over the weir, it can be like a bit of a fright, and it kind of shocks you. And I have heard of people in the past who have gone in there and got cramps just from like the difference in temperature, and it just freaks them out a little bit. So just be aware, yet again, just something that you can have in your head that you go, it might be a little bit cooler over there, and just not to freak out pretty much.
So this is why this podcast format works. This is why the thick and the thin thing works. I was just bringing it up because it was a taste of water difference in my mouth, whereas you've actually added some substance and said, no, the temperature. So yeah,
well,
so it's already working, mate.
Back to the thick and the thin of it, Bojo. It's I mean, everyone's so skinny who's like, you know, done a lot of training, and it's very hard to keep weight on when you're doing so many hours of training. So the cold affects you a lot. And so pre-race, you want to stay warm. So you've got to do everything you can to be warm before you get in the water. And then as you go over there, you just got to be aware of it so you don't freak out about it. But yeah, it's always pretty cool in the water for the apparent thin ones.
So here's some usable information for reference. If you're packing your street gear bag, or like you said, you got your friends and family, it was definitely, I had a hoodie and a beanie on. So if you're packing your stuff and you're getting ready at home and you're coming down from north or wherever you're coming from, throw a beanie and a hoodie in it. And I was so glad I had the two of those. But yeah, that'll help you keep you warm pre-race, because yeah, it's fresh. For a dry start though, the boat ramp was very wet before we got in. I'm not sure what was happening in people's wetsuits, but the ground was definitely wet and warm.
Mate, you got to stay warm any means necessary. But to what you've just said, Beau, like when we were down there a few weeks ago with some of the other guys, like it was still really humid. And so for the people who have been there in the last couple of months, they'll be like thinking, oh, you know, it's pretty warm. But when we were there, the season's definitely changed. It's a lot cooler. And I think that's one thing to recognize is when you look back on Garmin files from previous races, like I think it was 9 degrees when we got on the bike one year. Like that's pretty cool for the first hour or two. Obviously we'll get to it, but the new bike course, you're not on the coast, and it is actually like we felt it when we got down there. You know, a few k's west is a few degrees different, so that's something to also have in your mind. And
tree line.
Everyone's checking the weather hourly for the week of the race, even though they can't control it. But one thing to note is obviously how cold it is going to be, and you just got to dress accordingly.
So let's jump out of the swim. We've just done, there's no real nutrition chat or hydration chat. You'd basically have whatever you need to have before you do your swim. You get out, your adrenaline goes back through the roof, you run back up the boat ramp, you got the crowd, everyone's yelling. It's a really good vibe running back into that T1 tent. I know we said we wouldn't. T1, mate. What are you doing? You ripping through T1 like a madman? You tell your athletes to be controlled. Like what's the feed?
Mate, I pretty much say the same thing for every race, whether it's a sprint all the way up to Ironman. You just got to hurry slowly, right? So if you go through there the day before when you check all your gear in, hang your stuff up, take that minute or two to like really walk through the transition. Like just stand there and look. I come in there, got my bag packed. I'm going to be helmet, shoes out. You know, run through that checklist in your head of how you're going to do it, because then autonomously race day, you kind of get in there, and if you just hurry slowly and run through your process of getting there, wetsuit off, socks on, however you're going to do it, there's always people in there to help you who are very happy to help.
Yeah.
So if you need a hand,
it's so lovely.
Yeah, so that they love it. So like when you say you've got, like for me, I'll never swim with my suit over my shoulders. I just don't like the restriction. So you're wet, you're trying to get your suit on, and it can be the biggest punishment. But when you get in there, if you say, can you help me? Like someone's always going to come and give you a hand to get your gear on. So it's like, get through there the day before, run through it in your head, what you're planning on doing. And then it should almost come second nature because you've thought about it step by step the day before. But mate, there's no point hurrying. you'll just freak yourself out. You
Just
just
on the just on what you're saying about standing in there for a couple of minutes. When you check in, there's no real rush to. There's no one hurrying you in or out. You have got time to do a full 360. Like sighting with swimming, I took some time to find one of the posts, like not because I know they've got your numbers but in the blur of things, and when there's other people pushing in front of you, you can't always rely on the numbers. I found one of the marquee posts that had a weird little clip on the top of it, so I knew that was my sight. I knew going in. I was like, find that, go to that, and then look down, and your bag will be somewhere within those couple of meters. It's also
it's certainly with like in T1 and T2 where your bags are hung up. It's certainly one of those parts where if you just think to yourself, all right, row 3, and you just say row 3, like 1, 2, 3, and it's just like that'll stick in your head. The second you come out of the water and you'll run out, you'll look up and you'll go row 3, and straight away that'll be in your head. And that's the same with it might be whatever row you're on with your bike. If you just walk through and go row 3 for my bag or row 7 for my bike or whatever, it'll be in your head. It's surprising how those little things, if you just take the time to literally, like where you get out of the water, if you walk through, you walk into where you're going to come and you go, okay, I'm row 3, you walk through, go through, I know what I'm doing in here, and you walk out to your bike and then go. It'll be in your head and it'll just come second nature. Because if you're in the water from anywhere from like 45 to an hour 15, whatever it is, you've been laying horizontal, you get up and it's like you've had 100 schooners at the pub. Like you kind of stand up, you're a bit all over the shop. That's probably where a lot of people start to try and the blood moves from your shoulders down into your legs, and you get a bit like kind of, you're not really coherent. Yeah. And so if you've got those thoughts, it makes your day a lot easier. But I would say hurry slowly is number one.
Hurry slowly. I love hurry slowly. I'm a big fan of hurry slowly. The visualization, we're big into visualization here. Like you said, when you're going through transition, a lot of the reason why the boys were up riding the course is that they want to, in that training weekend, was to be able to visualize the course and to visualize what landmarks there are. It's amazing how much nostalgia comes into it, and you can use that to find some positive emotions. Oh, this looks like the training ride, or this is similar to the road that I've been doing this on, because it comforts you. The boys were using that a lot. This road's very similar to this. They're on the ride out. The good news is, and the only questions that we've had, there are 2 questions that come in, and you were asking me, like, can you send me the questions ahead of time? There was only 2 types of questions. One of them was, what's the weather going to be like? We touched on that. It doesn't matter.
But what's the weather going to be like? Check the app every hour from now until race day.
And then during the race, check it too, because it's 12 hours. It would change. Mate, my bike league last year had rain, sun, wind. Just prepare for everything. So
it's one of those things that I get 2 things that you can't really control on race day. What you should just be, everyone always, it's a bit cliche, but it's like control the controllables, right? So you can control like your effort, your hydration, nutrition, the way you dress for the weather. You can control that. You focus on those things. There's no point focusing on I've been training in 15 degrees and it's 10. Well, all you got to do is control what you can control and dress accordingly. There's no, so to answer the question, what's the weather going to be like? There'll be a little bit of everything. I think it's one of those places that it's deceptively cold nearly every time you race there, and then
hot on the Cat-Eye Flat.
By the time you get to like say the last hour or so on the bike, it's always that same thought of, whoa, this is a bit warmer than I kind of anticipated. But like, there's nothing you can do about controlling the temperature or the wind. So don't give it mental energy. Just control your controllables, the things that you can do on race day to execute as well as possible.
Good chat about that mental energy. The one thing we did, the second part of the question, one was weather. Secondly, the bike course. What surface is the bike course? The bike course, like what is it? Is it as steep as a thing? Like what's the road like? What's the road like? Everyone has to ask what the road's like. And I get it. If you can't get up and do a training camp, you do genuinely want to know what to prepare for. Best thing, the first fifth, fourth of the fifth, sixth of that course is flat. So for everyone's ears have just lit up because they've just heard me say the word flat. So from town out to the new Telegraph Point, it is flat, Clint, but there is a few little bumps
I
as
mean,
that you don't point out because it's the whole road?
it's if you the things you got to take into account if you're even going to ride the course now, and we talked about it when we were up there, is you can go and ride it now and you've got cars next to you and there's traffic everywhere and you can't really focus on what you're doing. We started in the dark the morning that we went out, so you're hitting and hoping on certain lines of the road, and you go through certain bits and go, wow, that's so bumpy. But on race day, you've got the pick of the road. You know, you can't stay far right, but if you aim for the wheel track, like the passenger side wheel track, especially along like Cat Eye Straight, for both the Ironman guys, but more specifically the 70.3 guys, you do notice how much smoother it is.
That's also one of the cool things about this podcast, and this is the whole concept I wanted to come back to, is things that I wish I knew before I raced. And this is the main one. We did the ride and you ride on the shoulder and you're on the shoulder the whole time and it's bumpy and there's shit on the road and you got a flat. Come race day, there's two lines of, I didn't realize how heavy the traffic was on the bike course. I didn't realize there were so many cyclists. Like I should have known. But there's two very neat lines in the wheel grooves. There's the slow guys on the left and the fast guys on the right. And everybody like clockwork stays in those grooves. And it's like nothing I trained for, because the road was deceptively smoother than the shoulder, which makes sense. So yeah, if you're listening, get in that groove and life will be much easier.
I think specifically the new course, like, I mean, if you think about you do go through the hills along the beach there at about 130 Ks in the bike or whatever, but you're not doing it twice like you did on the old course. I mean, you're doing 70.3 and that sucks. But the new ride course, like it gives you time to just settle in, whereas you used to almost roll out of town and like do as I say, and I was like, yeah, and you just like you don't get the chance to calm down. You know, as much as you're trying to ride comfortably and just settle in and go, I've got 180 Ks in a marathon to ride. You used to ride through there pretty far, like you just kind of would ignore those numbers until you got out of town. Whereas now it's a bit of a case of you get on the bike, you actually get some decent road on the way out to the old highway where you can just kind of settle in and go, okay, I've got a long day, got to have some drink, get my heart rate down, you know, have something to eat, and then we'll get on with it. So, well, I mean, one of the questions that I've had a lot is, do you think it'll be faster or slower? I think it'll be faster. So when we rode it, like we'd ridden it slowly, where you just kind of roll along, and it was like, oh, there's a fair few hills on it. It's pretty lumpy. And then I went home from the first time we were down there. And then when we went down, I said to the guys, just let's go 2 10-minute efforts in different parts of the course and just try and link up a few of the hills. And like universally, as soon as the guys did that, they're like, oh, it's a lot better to ride when you link up the hills through the rolling section. So when you're cruising along, it probably feels like, oh, it's pretty hilly. But when you're actually using the downhills to ride well, then you can link up a lot of the hills and you don't have to work as hard to get your speed. So
let's sit with this for a bit. This was the huge takeaway. This is something that if anyone that's watched the other YouTube clip with me and Clint in the car, we repeated this over and over and over again. And rightly so. It's one of the biggest takeaways I got from going away that weekend, is that prior to the course, I did a podcast with Crowie. I had numerous videos of people trying to tell me how to ride a hill. I thought I knew how to ride a hill. And it was one of those things that when it come race day, I got to the top of the hill, and under fatigue, you look down the hill and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to grab my drink bottle. I'm going to drink my carb mix. I'm going to have a bite of a banana, and then I'll worry about that hill when I get to it. And I did that the whole race, and my heart rate dead set was like a yo-yo the whole race, and it made for a long run. Went away with Clint, and the new bike course is rolling hills. My quick takeaway is the elevation's still up there. It's not flat by any means, so don't think that it's going to be an easy day, because there's still hills out there. But none of them have the aggression of the Cat Eye Hills or the Port Macquarie Hills that you used to hit straight away. They're rolling hills, and one of the things that I did was I got to the top of the hill, I smiled politely and went, stay on, keep pumping, stay in the height, the big ring, stay in the exact gear that you're going to be in, pump down the hill. So weight was always on the pedal on the downhill. And then 2/3 of the hill on the uphill was done before I could even shift to the little ring or shift 4 gears down. Like, it made the world of difference. My average speed for the Telegraph Point loop, and coming from a background of like no Ironman training, if it was much quicker than it would have been at my peak fitness. Like it was insane, the difference. So please, you can hear it in my voice. For anyone who's not capable of riding hills, I'm 120 kilos. I hate going up a hill. Love going down, hate going up. I took this advice and went, you know what? If it can work for me, it can work for anyone. Pedal down a hill like it owes you money, and then coast on the way up. Like it literally makes life so much easier. And there are the flat bits that if you do need a drink or you do need to eat, use the flat bits a bit smarter. Don't depend on a downhill.
So I guess what we were saying earlier in terms of the, you can't do much between now and race day to make your day better. But what you probably can do is wherever you live, find somewhere that's got a bit of rolling, where I do a lot of my riding is like 10K loop, boring as anything, but it's rolling. It's very similar to that kind of course. Choose that area, go and do your rides on there, try and control your power and the variability. And it's a learnt exercise. But I mean, if you get good at it, essentially, like if you ride it like Beau did like his time, it's like you're basically riding hard, easy efforts all day long. And that
it was 12 intervals. It was 12 hard uphill intervals.
Yeah. So like if you just
avoid
that.
Yeah.
Avoid that at all costs, because one of the main things you need to do in an Ironman is control your heart rate. And so if you're going hard easy, then you're doing exactly the opposite, stressing yourself out, calming down, stressing out, calming down, stressing out, calming down all day. And you got to pay to play, right? So if you start doing that, eventually it's going to come back and haunt you. So that would be a really good takeaway for someone who hasn't or won't be able to ride the course, is they should try and find somewhere with just shorter rolling hills. They don't have to be super steep. They don't have to be really long. It's just like, and just practice connecting the hills that you ride on. Because if you can keep your effort solid down hills through the flat, as you said, Beau, it's like you're 2/3 of the way up these apparent hills before you're really fighting that gravitational pull.
How would you, the road surface? I know we spoke about the wheel ruts. The road surface is, the two bridges are sketchy. They'll have those covered by the time you get out there. They'll have something safer in place, I'm sure. I think you can confirm that, Clintos. Maybe there's a few sharp right-handers. Be well aware of the course map. Maybe get it on your Garmin before you get out there. There are some rights. There's a right-hander around a hill that looks a bit slippery. Just ride well within yourself. The road surface is by no means busso rolling, but it's definitely not pot hill ridden. So I don't again, mental energy, don't waste any time stressing about this. It's nothing worse than you're training on. Like, so
I'd say that there's still no free speed, but there never was in Port Macquarie. Like, you've still got to work for your speed in terms of the roads are pretty dead, but as long as you've got the right, you haven't pumped your tires up to 140 PSI and you're just bouncing along the whole way, as long as you're set up well and you're just controlling your power, then there's not much you can do about the roads. But I mean, it's not terrible, but it's certainly not, that's for sure. One thing that we have found in the couple of weekends we've spent there is that make sure your bottles are really secure. Like, if you see it at all races, like Cairns, people hit the speed bump straight out of town. Port, you'll see it go down Matthew Flinders. They haven't really ridden. We had a couple of the Melburnians there who love Beach Road, and within 20K, their bikes are rattling loose because it is bumpy country road. So just make sure that you're confident that you're not going to bounce out of town and lose all your nutrition.
Yeah, have that definitely strapped down, mate. The PSI question, the one thing that I took away, and a few of the other boys took away from yourself too, was something that I wish I knew: less is more. We watch GCN, you watch all this and you think 110 PSI. I was subscribed to the 110 PSI program for a long time. I've seen the light. I now ride way lower than, I'm not going to give you the number because it's something you need to find out with your bike and your weight. However, all the boys out there were riding well down below 100, well down below 90 and lower. Like, so
Yeah,
just take that
for
on board.
sure.
That if you're listening, you don't, firm's not fast. Drop some
Yeah,
PF,
and
especially
and
on the
it's
deep down.
certainly that's something as well, Beau, with if you're going to ride some bumpy rolling roads somewhere, muck around with it. Take your pump out, ride a 10K loop, start at 60, 65, 70, 75, whatever, depending on obviously how heavy you are, how wide your tires are, that kind of thing. But it's certainly something that it doesn't take long to work out what's comfortable and what's quick. You can do roll down tests down a hill with the same kind of conditions, like same kind of road conditions, and just not pedal and see what goes the furthest. And you will be surprised. But yeah, the days of riding, 100 and that tubulars with 160 psi, and I'm like, if you're going to do that, you book into the dentist on Monday to get your teeth all put back in, because it is pretty bumpy. But I mean, that's just being diligent with your like your preparation, right? If you take the time to go and try your equipment at different levels and in different conditions, then you'll be confident on the day that you've got the right choice. Or talk to your coach.
RPG.com. If you've come back in, we've done our 2 laps out west. You've gone through. It's scenic as fuck. You are going to enjoy it. It's country roads. There's tree lines, so it is in the shade. It will be cold. We touched on that about the swim. It's going to be cold out there on those 2 loops. Shade. You've done your 2 loops. You head back into town. You've got to calm yourself down a little bit because you've just done 80 Ks. You're going to come back in and you're going to see all those people that love you, and they're going to have all these strangers telling you you're proud of you, and your heart rate naturally is going to go through the roof because you're being swooned upon by a bunch of strangers. You want to look fast. You ride straight through Port and you go smack bang into an uphill out of town to get yourself to Flinders. What are we telling people when they come back in from the west into the town into start the cat eye bit?
I think once we spent some time on the course, and like having ridden the whole course, it's as soon as I finished it, the first time, it was blatantly obvious what's going to happen. Like, people will ride solid out there for their probably 100, you'll have about 120K on the 2 loops out there. And it's about 10K to town that's relatively flat, where you can kind of start thumping along pretty well and start, you'll start looking at your speed and go, I'm making up. I'm going quicker here than my average, and just forget what you're doing. And then as you roll into town, you get some hot mix. Yeah, I'm flying here through town, see all your friends, family. They're all telling you you're amazing. Ride through the hills too hard, and all of a sudden it's been half an hour and you've forgotten your process of like hydrating, having your nutrition, sticking your plans, sticking to your heart rate zones. I think there'll be a lot of people who will ride into town too hard, through town too hard. And when they get out near the golf course, I'd say that'd be about 150-ish Ks maybe. That'll be where it'll be a bit like when you hit the flat section out to Cat Eye, and it's like, okay, it's flat. I probably should get back down in the aero bars. That's where I think a lot of people will be like, oof, might have
done a few matches here.
Cook this a little bit. So like the one takeaway I had straight away was like, I think you could do a lot of damage from Telegraph Point through town. That's where I'd almost say that's a good, as an age grouper who's, racing just to get from A to B as quickly as they can. I feel like that's a really good point to play a bit of defense. Like the bit from Telegraph Point to town is where you can just kind of allow your heart rate to be a bit lower or your power to be a bit lower, because you're going to be coasting along pretty well, and make sure you're hydrating, you're having your nutrition, you're thinking, have I had enough? I'm a fair few hours in now. I've got to try and set up the rest of the day. So that's a point where I think you can either make or break your day, depending on how you play it.
That's some really good advice there. It's probably hard advice to follow, especially for your average age group. But if you are listening, it will pay. We spoke about it in the top of the Flinders that if it's going to, for losing the sake of 30 seconds on the bike ride to ensure that your heart rate stays in that good area, you're going to make that 30 seconds back up within 5 minutes on the run just from being in a stable position. So yeah, take it on board. Go easy. Use those as you talk about visual cues. Use that. You've just heard Clint say it. Telegraph Point back into town. use that as your time to sit, reflect, and go, righto, make sure my bottles are empty, make sure my nutrition's empty. If I eaten everything, if I've done everything that I've in my process, because you're going to suck your guts in. You're going to look good going through town. So we won't tell you to go easy there because everyone wants their photos looking tight. So, but make sure that you've plenty of matches when you get to the camels, because we spoke about this on the YouTube clip in the car. It's the aid stations at the top of the hill, and you're about to come into a flat, and people get into the mistake of eating, drinking, fiddling around with their pockets when they should be focusing on the camel hill before the watch that YouTube.
I think there's maybe 3 there that you kind of connect together, and that was actually the point where nearly all the guys were riding into a headwind, and when we got out to Cat Eye, they were all like, "Oh, it's starting to get pretty warm," and that's exactly what we're saying before about the weather down there. Is like the last hour or so of the bike, it does start to get pretty warm, and out the back there, you will have a fair bit of shade. But once you get kind of through town, it's you kind of out in the open.
Sun's high.
Yeah, it starts to get warm, and then once you get out to Cat Eye, you're 9 times out of 10 there, you're pushing into a southerly, so you'll ride out of town into the wind, get to Cat Eye, you turn around and come. You're starting to get towards the business end. You start to think to yourself, I've got to run soon enough. But when you roll back towards town with the wind, that's really when you're not getting that cooling effect over your body. It's starting to get warmer. The sun's higher in the sky, and you're like, oh, it's actually starting to get pretty hot. So like we said just before, if you've ridden that bit into town and through town without drinking, without focusing on your process of staying hydrated, having your nutrition, then all of a sudden you'll get out there and you're a kilo down because you've forgot to drink and you're playing catch up.
That was we parked up on the just at the start of the flats, coming through the Camel Hills before we went out to Cat Eye. Just without throwing anyone on the bus that we're training with, that was the real grey area of the ride. That's the part of the ride where the boys that hadn't got the first 4 hours of their ride right wanted to turn around and go home. They wanted their mum. They wanted to bail. Whereas the boys that spent time, paced themselves through the first part of the day, they had their nutrition right. That's when they kicked. That's where they went, okay, flat Cat Eye Road, time to get aero, time to go to work. And they did that really well. So Blake Parker touched on it really well out with the flowers on the western part of the loop. He said, if I'm in a position where I can't enjoy these flowers, I know I'm going too hard. So to give you another measure of thumb, you want the flowers out on the loop. I'm not going to tell you where they are. You'll see them and go, oh, they're lovely flowers. That means you're in a good spot. The second reference point we want with your visualization, not Clint, this is not coach endorsed at all. Enjoy the camels. If both times you see them, if you're on the way out and you can look at the camels and smile and remember this podcast, you're welcome. And then on the way back in, if you can still smile at those camels, you've set yourself up well and you're going to do well. Because once you see the camels on the way back in, you've only got that small Flinders Hill, Clint.
That's that piece, like we were saying on the video we did, Beau, is like when you drive, like you might drive the course and you're looking and you think to yourself, oh, it's flat, this is awesome. But it's those points where you're 4 or 5 hours in and you can see right up the road and it's dead flat and you're like, I should get aero here. The wind's in my face, but it just starts to get uncomfortable. And if you've made the day more uncomfortable by not dosing your effort and not staying on top of your nutrition and hydration, that's where you'll just be like, this is shit. What have I done? But if you set it up well, like Blake did that day, they got to that section and rode like they rode harder than they should because they'd set it up in the time earlier. But yeah, just to kind of recap that once you drove once we've ridden the course and driven it, it's blatantly obvious how people can ruin this day. So you just gotta dose your effort accordingly and you'll be sweet. I think the ride will be quicker just for the fact that you're not going through those hills along the beach 2 times and you can connect a lot of the hills out the back if you dose your effort well.
You can link them for all of our advice on Flinders. Please see the previous YouTube clip. We're not going to rip into that one again. I think Flinders gets too much airtime. We spoke about this. There's big things in the day.
I will. I've got to do it. It's mate. It's like it's 200 meters of 180 Ks or 220 something if you add it all up. Like it's a drop in the ocean. And like, it wouldn't bother me if someone was riding 5 hours and decide to walk up it if that's what they want to do to keep their heart rate in check. It's like, it's really not.
So this is one of those things for the 13-hour plus guys. There's no shame in walking up that hill.
Man, drop the ego, like, and you just drop the ego. Once you see your heart rate get too high, unclip, walk up. You'll say you might lose a minute. Like we said earlier, I promise you'll get it back. That's a check in the bank, mate. You can go and cash later. So like, yeah, don't feel like you've got to ride up there because it does. Like people get so wound up.
Well,
and there's a crowd there and stuff. You don't need to.
They make that their race. A lot of people focus so much on Flinders that becomes the highlight of their ride. The only thing they think about the ride is I have to get up Flinders, and I fell into that trap because I didn't want to be seen walking. And in hindsight, God, I should have got off, had a walk, had a drink. Yep. High-fived a few people. Mario and Luigi, g'day, Fonganator. How are you, mate? They were there on the road. Like you can have some fun with your walk, and then, like I said, you're gonna find that back on your run. So,
and even like we spoke about it on the video, but like it's the K after. So like if you get off and you get to the top and your heart rate's low, you can ride the next bit fine, and you'd be surprised how little time you'd lose because people spend the next kilometre or a kilometre and a half just revving way higher than they should. So just walk up the hill, clip back in, finish the day.
If I would have walked up the hill on race day, if I would have walked up, hand on my heart, got to the top of the telegraph pole, clip back in, I would have caught the me who rode it within 100 meters. So for the sake of the photo of going up the hill, I would have made, we did that twice. The 70.3 guys did that twice. I would have had the other guy by 100 meters and then some. I would have got to the stop sign because you're riding at that heart rate where you're not pushing.
I think that just quietly, I think the photo guy's about halfway up. So just get to halfway, get your shots, grimace, look amazing, and then unclip and walk the rest.
Just do it. I did want to highlight too. Everyone thinks Flinders is dead straight. Watching those clips back and the way you spoke about it, it's a double roll. You get a tabletop in the middle, and if I'm someone who knows I'm going to be in granny gear, I'm not going from the big ring to the small ring until I hit that tabletop because the amount of people that go big ring, small ring on that corner, and there's still more of a downhill, and they throw their chain and the hill's over before it starts. So I just know you have got a little break a third of the way up to get off the power and use your gears a bit more effectively. So don't throw your toys out of the cot before you start climbing.
But we'll leave Flinders there because, as I said, it's a couple of 100 meters in a 220K day.
We've got a bit more to go. We roll through town, the rolling hills. If you've listened to any of this podcast, you know what we're going to say. Pedal down, pedal up. Is that easy?
Link them up. Yeah.
Are you going to do a stock take before you get back into your run? Are you going to look at your bottle cages and make sure you've had, do you set reminders or?
Like I know it might, I'll always write things on my bottles, and I tell a lot of the guys to do it as well. Like the bottle between your arms, I'll write just mental cues on there. And one of the things I'll always write is 30-30. And that'll be, all that's telling me to do is think 30 minutes previously and 30 minutes ahead. And you'll be amazed how often you look down and go 30-30. Oh, that's right. So yeah, did I drink? Yeah, I probably haven't drunk enough. So like, if you're getting 2K from town, you go, oh shit, have I drunk enough? And it's the first time you've kind of been monitoring that. If you're one of the guys that I coach, then I've failed because it's something that you need to be monitoring the whole way. But yeah, certainly not so much am I doing a stock take or, I'm going to finish that whole bottle. It's like you look down and go, oh, what do I want to have now? So I'm not having, half a bottle a kilometre before I get on the run and start sloshing around. So, I mean, like you're forever stock taking, you're forever 30-30ing. And it's like, but that's probably your last opportunity to make a difference, because if you get towards town and you're doing that, you always see guys, like if you're standing like a K or so into the run, guys like start running and they'll come past and they're backfiring and they're like burping heaps and you're just like, yeah, they've probably done stock take on the way to town and jammed a bit too much in, and all of a sudden it's kind of the gases are coming out both ends. So like it's after Flinders probably the last time you can really go, all right, what have I got to get in before I got to set this run up?
Well, we get into town, we throw our bike into the Hastings River and refuse to hop on it again. It's been a long 180 Ks. We've got nothing left but a run. We get into T2. Same thing, hurry slowly, make sure we got our pockets, have got our supplies, we've got our hat, hopefully a fractal Bottle.It hat. And we're going to put in our sunnies, our hydration. We're going to step out onto the run course, mate. And out of T2, out of the first 20 minutes of the run, mate, anything from you? Like what's that process? Are you hurrying slowly?
I think it's very rare that you start running and go, I'm killing it. So you're gonna get off the bike and you just sat on your bike for between 4.5 hours and 7 hours or something. It's like you're gonna get off and feel a bit rusty. The problem with that course is it's both a blessing and a curse. Is that there's so many people
in front of so many people.
Yeah, but like, people are giving it to you, and you've just got to settle in. It's the same as when you start the swim, right? You kind of get it run, and you got to take time to just settle down, because 42 Ks is a very long way. You run through town. Obviously, you come out of T2, run through town. You'll see a lot of people for pretty much about the first 5 Ks. So, like, really, I'll tell all the guys that I coach, like, heart rate. Watch your heart rate. Don't go stupid, because you're always, even if you feel rusty, if you're just watching pace, all of a sudden your first K goes off, you're like, oh my God, I'm going way too fast, because you're just excited, one, to be off that bike that you've just thrown into the Hastings River, but two, that everyone's telling you're amazing. Specifically, like that course, it lends itself to running stupid at the start, because everyone's there, and like,
I like that we've just come from internet's just timed out, so I never
telling
know
you how great you are.
There you go. I never know if it's a dramatic pause or if it's if it's the internet. So apologies for anyone listening. Sort me out with some internet connection, please. The one thing that sorts you out real quick is if the crowd, if you are highly excited because of the crowd, like myself, you're going to have a physical landmark punch you in the face. And I'm glad we just spoke about walking Flinders. That hill from the little shack up to the top of the tri clubs will no longer be up the top of that, but everyone knows the hill I'm talking about. What are you approaching that the exact same as Flinders?
Yeah, it's the same thing, mate. Just, you got to drop your ego. Like, it's just a process, right? You turn up, like, you're running. Most people will have either a heart rate or some run to power or whatever they use. You'll have some form of metric that you're kind of sticking to. One thing I do say to a lot of people, when I said to the guys when we were down there, is when you watch beeps after that hill for the next kilometer, don't look at it. Give yourself 4 Ks. So there's 4 Ks in that run that yet again 30 seconds will come back, down the track. Right. If you can, you go up over the hill, you come over the top, it might be 300 or 400 meters down, you watch beeps to tell you what that K was. Don't look. You don't need to know. You need to just run that hill as efficiently and as steady as possible to make sure that you're not revving higher than you should.
The one thing I like the way you said efficiently. The one thing I got right on my Ironman race day was I made it quite clear quite early. I'm walking that hill. Every time I get to the shack, I'm walking that hill. I don't care what anyone says. And I got bullied. Like, the most supportive crowd in the world in Australia. I got the same thing, question marks. Like, what are you running for? It's your first lap. I was like, no, I just stayed firm and said, no, I'm doing this. I'm going. And same thing. If I tried to run that for the photo or for the crowd or for my ego, I would have been all sorts. I did enjoy the walk up the hill to get some food on or have a drink. And then, like you said, when you get back down to the break wall, you've got 2 Ks of a run with a crowd that you're going to make any time you lose back just out of sheer, excitement.
So if you run that hill too hard, like, I'll always give the guys an upper limit, like heart rate wise. And it'll just be like, I'll tell them that it can drift X amount, like it can raise whatever that may be, 4 beats, 6 beats, whatever we work out. And it's, once it gets there, that's your limit. And you go as slow as you need to up that hill, whether that's walking, whether that's a real slow jog. But what everyone needs to realize is as you come across the top, it's pretty flat for 100, 200 meters. And then you've got that steady downhill, right? Where you get the chance to relax, calm down, and get your heart rate back in check. So if you just do the right thing along there, keep your heart up that hill, and then relax when you come across the top, then you're certainly going to be back to your rhythm a lot quicker than if you go up there, let your heart rate fly up to threshold, and then you spend the next 3 or 4 minutes going down the hill panting like a maniac.
And that's what you see. That's what I was watching. I was walking past
form. That's where you...
On the no form thing, you see people sprint or try to push up the hill harder than they can. And then you have got a downhill and you've got a sharp left come back through the car park. They've gone so hard, lactic's up, heart rate's up. They can't handle the down, and they end up.
No, that's something we've spoken about when we were down there, and when I was down there previously as well. Is like you've got to manage that down as much as you manage the up, because if you belt down that hill with a really long stride and just smash your quads into the ground, like, mate, it's that's where a lot of people that they can really ruin their run, because you got to protect yourself early on to make sure that you can actually run well at the end, because muscle breakdown is going to be the limiting factor, right? So if you come down that hill too fast because you've run up the hill too fast, you're going to pay for it.
Hurry slowly. You heard it here first. Not just in T1 and T2. So we get through town. Running through town is one of those things. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you're about to have a great day on your run. It's going to be the most enjoyable. The first half of that run's the most enjoyable run you'll ever do. With the crowd, with the noise, with people, it is. You can hear the 70.3 guys finishing. It's very exciting. I promise you this. It doesn't matter what stage you are, fitness-wise, you're going to enjoy the run. Until you go past Market Town Macca's and you go over the 2 bridges and you're onto this isolating flat where the crowds, you can still hear the crowd, but you're on your Pat Malone, mate. Before we get out there, one of the things that I enjoyed hearing you talk to the athletes about, one of the things we tried to do is just 2Ks. You're not running 42 Ks. You're running, what quick math, the coach here. You're running 21 2K efforts. And this is one of those things where once you realize that the smiles of the crowd have gone, you can smile again knowing that, okay, I get to see an aid station in X amount of Ks, and the guys at the aid station are amazing. God bless them. And how do you set yourself up? It's dead flat. It's 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 the only time of the run where you can actually get some time to have a think and get your processes on and calm yourself back down. What are you looking for in probably the 5Ks of the flat area?
I'd say that's a bit after the first, like in the first lap, you get through there and it's like, all right, that's normally similar to when you get in the water. It's like, right, I've still got a long way to go. I've really got to curb my enthusiasm and just focus on good technique. In training, always say to people, come up with your mental cues, because eventually, like, it's a 4-lap run. It's amazing. Like, there's support everywhere. And that bit out the back there's a bit quiet, but that's a good time to just run through your checklist, right? Like, and whatever that is in your head, whether it's like a silly little motivational thing or something to actually your technique cues to work on, that's when you can go, all right, am I still leaning well? Am I still keeping my core engaged? Am I not leaning from the hips, or whatever you've got in your head? That's a good time to just like had enough hydration. What am I going to get at the next aid station? All those little things along there. In a way, it's bad to have the quiet section out there, but in a way, it's also good to go, all right, run through your checklist. What have I got to do to make sure that I'm going to be good? And then when you get back into the crowd, then you can run along and, flex for all your mates and all that.
Contrary to popular belief, being the egotistical bloke I am, the extrovert, the quiet part was my favorite part of the run for that reason.
Yeah, because it just gives you that chance to take stock, to like think about what you need to do. Because I mean, I've said it to you before, but it's a simple equation, right? You're getting from A to B as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And it's a process to get there, right? So you just got to do it as well as you can. And that's a good time where you go, all right, what have I got to do from now to get to the finish as efficiently and as quickly as possible?
I like the analogy. You can probably tighten this a bit up for the run leg, like you said, the 30 before, 30 after, to the 2 before, 2 after. Interrupt me if I'm just murdering your expression.
No, it's right.
Okay. And then it's that really cool thing where I like the idea of aid stations are like this beautiful oasis in the middle of a run where you have got friendly people wanting to help you. And like you said, if you know at the previous aid station you had, for example, you got on the Black Doctor and you had a Gatorade and a few lollies, you know, at the next one, actually, I might grab a water and a cup of ice and leave the sugar for the next one. And I think that's a really cool way to break your rundown into what you can treat yourself with at an aid station.
For sure.
I've really enjoyed that same thing. Once you start going through those processes and you've got that, your mental fatigue, you're staying on top of your mental fatigue because you're doing these fun little things like, okay, Gatorade, Coke, water, Gatorade, or whatever that is for you.
You do the same, right? In training, it's like, you know, I'll have guys run 2K repeats and they might have like water at 2K, Gatorade or Coke or whatever it is. And so then on race day, it's like you're coming into an aid station, you know where it is, and you go, what did I have at the last one? Okay, this one I'm going to have this. And you just play that same 2K repeat thing over and over and over to like get from A to B as efficiently as possible, right? You're just managing what you're having to make that process work.
To get through it. It's also a good time for the age grouper who's going north of 12 hours. Sit back and reflect. You've done the swim, you've done the ride, you've done half your run. You've only got a little bit to go, so you can start rewarding yourself mentally with, you know, you can start pumping your own tires up a little bit out in that flat. Technically, it's 4 laps. It's 4 laps of what we just broke down. There's a really crowded part with music and people and all your friends and family and the photos. So yeah, suck your guts in, enjoy the run, go slowly up the hill, go slowly down the hill. You're going to make that time back on the break wall. Running on that break wall is special. Out to the flat, it's quiet. It's not, definitely the support's still there. There's still people having house parties, like they're still around you, but it's quieter. It's much quieter. It's a good time to get in your own head and see how you're going. Anything else on the run course that's worth noting? It does get a bit technical. You might need to jump in here with the footpath, duck it up.
I think it's like times. Yeah, it's a lot better now that they've concreted a lot of it. But what you said is a good way to. I mean, if you think about 42 Ks, it's a long way, right? But if you just run it as like you almost dumb your brain down, and at some point you're going to start making deals with yourself, you know, whether that be, you know, walk the aid stations or walk a little bit or whatever. But if you just break it down as 4 loops, it's probably a lot easier to process it around 4Ks. Like it's just 4 loops, settle into it, turn your brain off for a couple and survive, right? But yeah, it's not too technical these days. I think the only spots that might, like the bridge can, I mean, the worst part of any run like that is when you've got to do a U-turn at the end, right? And you take all the speed out of your rhythm. Yeah.
So, did you see what happened when we did the run out there at the training course and the boys were running?
No.
So they're at the thin end of this podcast, and I'm at the thick end. They're running out there and they're running an amazing pace. It was a privilege to watch. The guys were moving well, and they're like, "Oh, where do we turn around?" And I'm like, "Here, this post right here is a turnaround point." And they're like, "Nah, I'm sure it's further. I'm sure it's." I'm like, "No, it's clearly burnt into my memory where you turn around because it fucking hurts."
Yeah, it's the worst, right? Anything that takes the momentum or the wind out of your sails. But yeah, mate, it's not too much technical about it. It's probably, it would honestly be one of the best run courses of any of the races that I've done because, you know, there's people popping up everywhere around the course, you know, and that just, you just don't feel alone. And whether that be spectators or family or just people you know or others on course, like once you get out the far end, like you'll still see others on course that you know, and because it's a loop course, you might be passing people, they might be passing you, but it's the best run course I think of nearly any race. So it's
my best race memories, and I'm not a runner. I didn't enjoy the run. If you look at my Strava, my times, I didn't enjoy the run. It was like on paper, didn't look. That's where I met the most amazing people.
Yeah.
Some other bloke went past. I was like, mate, I got a bit of cramp. And he goes, here, have my cramp fix. And I was just like, I was so blown away that during his race, he took time for me. I met Emily McPhee, who's racing in the Floral this year. She was collapsed. She did it on no training at all. And she still went on to finish the race. And that's where I learnt that sometimes walking's faster than running. And I just got all these things. And the supporters, like I said, there was a 7-year-old girl in the driveway and she's just yelling out, I'm so proud of you. And again, I nearly cried. I'm like, I don't know her. I don't know who she is. Like, it was just really overwhelming on the senses, especially when you are mentally fatigued. And it's that weird thing with this. And as much as me and Clint are trying to tell you how to do your race day, only you can do it. And there are going to be times that this day is going to be so special for you. And I personally, I know Clint feels the same because he's done so many of them. We can't wait for people to do it for the first time because it means so much to you. And it's only you can experience.
It is a very good day. And to do, if you've chosen Port as your first race, you've made the right decision. Yes, you could go and find a course that's faster, that's easier, but this Ironman Australia Port Macquarie it's the best one for sure.
That's what I thoroughly enjoy about it. Same thing. Everyone's like, oh, do this course, do that course. They've all got pros and cons. Ironman Australia's probably got the demands the most respect because it's a hard course. There's no ifs, buts, and maybes. And everyone who's done it, like even this new course, as much as I've joked with the new guys saying, oh yeah, you guys have got it easy. Like, it's an easier course. You guys are, well done champs. Like as much as you try, after riding the West course, it's very similar. It's not that too different to what we did last year. But you've still done Port Macquarie. Port Macquarie is a very special place and it always will be. So yeah, get excited. You hopefully by the time that I edit this, which I don't think there's too much editing. So all the internet laps have just made it sound like a dramatic pause. Hopefully by the time this goes live, you've got 4 weeks to get it sorted.
Just remember, fresh is best. You can't do anything in the next 4 weeks that's dramatically going to change your day, but you can certainly ruin it by panic training.
Panic training. Avoid panic training. Hurry slowly. 30-30, 2-2. Hopefully there have been some takeaways. I'm going to break down the takeaways and throw them in the description. Once again, Clint, I've thanked you extensively on social media for your weekend that you did with us. I'm going to thank you again for your time with the podcast. I'm sure everyone listening, including myself, has taken a lot out of it. So I do thank you for this. It's something you do professionally, but however, all your time with Bottle.It has been for free. So we thank you very much. And I know our listeners feel the same. For those boys that are paying to have your services with RPGs, I cannot wait for the shit they give you for this podcast. I do enjoy the banter you have with all of your athletes, and I can't wait to help fuel that fire with them. As one of your athletes in Cairns, bring it on.
Thanks, mate. Always enjoy it. I think that I do it. Love it. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions, make sure they fire them through and we'll do our best to help you out to make sure you don't make those silly little mistakes on race day that we hear about afterwards and just go, oh, how did you do that? So hopefully there's been something in this that you can take away that's a positive.
Something for sure, mate. What a well-behaved little dog you have. No interruptions. I have to edit the dog out.
Yeah.
Ali did the same thing. As soon as I said to me and you were going to do a podcast, she fell asleep in the background.
That's good.
Voices, mate. Just our voices.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you, Clint. We'll talk to you.
Was that your internet or mine?
Probably mine, mate. Ali's downstairs downloading movies or something illegal. So, yeah.
I couldn't, a few times you just paused and I just had to guess what you said.
I did the exact same. So I'll listen back to it. Hopefully it's not too bad for the listeners at home. But, yeah, thank you, Matt. Talk to you soon.
Enjoy the weekend. It's always good, Bojo.
Thanks, mate.